Explain the construction of leaf spring and its types. We know that steel spring is mainly classified into 4 types: leaf springs, tapered leaf springs, coil springs, and torsion bars. Now let's discuss the construction of leaf spring in detail. A typical leaf spring can be shown as: here we can see that the spring consists of a number of leaves, known as blades. The top surface of each of these blades is treated with short peening process, which introduces a compressive residual stress in them, and thus increases their fatigue strength. Also, the edges of these blades are rounded to avoid stress concentration. All these blades are bound together with steel straps or clips to form the spring assembly. The length of these blades varies, so that the spring assembly acts as a flexible beam of uniform strength. The top blade with maximum length is known as master leaf and has loops at both the ends, which are known as spring eyes. This spring assembly is supported on the axle longitudinally by means of a U-bolt. Also, one end of the spring is mounted on the chassis frame with the help of a bush and simple pin, whereas the other end is mounted using a shackle. This shackle provides a flexible connection for spring to stretch. Thus, whenever the vehicle comes across a projection on the road surface, the spring has room to stretch and doesn't break. For heavier vehicles, the bushes used for mounting spring on the frame are phosphor bronze bushes. These bushes need lubrication for smoother use. However, nowadays, for lighter vehicles, rubber bushing is done. This eliminates the requirement of bush lubrication, as well as the wear on the pin or the bush is negligible. Also, the rubber bushes are quiet in operation and they allow for slight assembly misalignment. Camber or curve of the spring also plays an important role in suspension. The spring may be either cambered initially or flat. Highly cambered spring provides soft suspension, but also has a tendency to rotate about vertical axis or yaw, whereas flat or less cambered spring reduces the tendency of vehicle to dip, but provides hard suspension. Longer springs provide softer suspension due to higher camber. Generally, rear springs are kept longer than front springs, which cause them to vibrate at different frequencies, thus preventing excessive bounce. Now we know that when the spring deflects, relative motion takes place between the individual leaves, thus causing a damping effect. With time, as the spring becomes rusty and dirty, this motion becomes excessive, and damping effect is no longer produced. Also, it produces squeaking sound, which is unfavorable. To reduce this, the spring leaves are interleaved with material of low friction coefficient. Also, in some springs, special inserts made of rubber or wax cloth are provided at the end of each leaf to provide efficient spring operation. This concludes the constructional detail of leaf spring. Now, according to the shapes, leaf spring can be of 5 types. Full elliptic leaf spring. In this type, 2 semi-elliptic leaf springs are joined to form the shape of an ellipse. 3/4 elliptic leaf spring. In this type, 1 semi-elliptic leaf spring is joined to a 1/4 elliptic leaf spring. Semi-elliptic leaf spring. In this type, the spring forms a shape of half ellipse. 1/4 elliptic leaf spring. In this type, the spring is half of semi-elliptic spring. Transverse leaf spring. In this type, the semi-elliptic leaf spring has the saddle above, forming a bow, and is fitted parallel to the axle. Other than these types, in heavy-duty commercial vehicles, helper springs are used, in addition to main leaf springs. These helper springs are also semi-elliptic in shape but without eyes at the end. They are joined to the main leaf spring with the help of U-bolt and metal clips. Now during light loading, these helper springs don't come into play. But when the load is increased to such an extent that the ends of helper spring comes in contact with brackets provided on the frame, then the helper spring comes into operation. It is generally employed on the rear suspension only. Now let's summarize the leaf springs as: